The meeting is now recording.
Excellent. So I call the MWPA November 6, 2020 Executive Committee meeting to order. Allison, will you please call the roll to ensure that we have a quorum of the committee present?
Novato Fire District,
Here.
County of Marin,
Here.
City of Mill Valley, Town of Ross,
Here.
City of San Rafael.
Present.
A quorum is present with 4 members.
Excellent. Thank you, Allison. Agenda adjustments. I would like to suggest an agenda adjustment. I suggest that item 5 be moved after item 9. That will give us time to kind of work through all the nuts and bolts before we talk about this coming month's agenda.
Do you need a motion? Any
other agenda adjustments? I don't think we need a motion, Julie. I understand that as president, I have the prerogative to move something. Thanks for those people who have told me that. I'm assuming it's true. Any other agenda adjustments, please? Okay, let's see, hearing none. This is a time for open public expression. So the public is welcome to address the board of directors at this time on matters that are not on the agenda and that are within the purview and jurisdiction of the board. Please be advised that pursuant to Government Code Section 54954.2, the board is not permitted to discuss or take action on any matter not on the agenda. Comments may be no longer than 3 minutes, and they should be respectful to the community. And I ask everyone, please, to silence your cell phones during the meeting and mute your microphone when not reporting out. So we're accepting public comments at this time over the telephone through Zoom chat. If you're participating by telephone and wish to provide comments, please press *9 and wait until you hear a notification that you've been unmuted. Then you'll be able to speak for 3 minutes, and we will be keeping the time. If you're submitting public comments in Zoom chat, please submit your comments by writing public comment in all caps and introduce yourself. This is an opportunity for public comment. And I want to welcome Director McEntee, please.
Hi, sorry, the link was not working for some reason. Okay. Thanks, Mark, for resending it.
Thank you. Is there any public comment at this time?
I'm looking for any raised hands in our audience and any submitted chat comments, and there is no public comment.
Excellent. Thank you, Allison. We will move to agenda item number 6, which is the low income senior tax exemption appeals process. Executive Officer Mark Brown, will you please provide a staff report on the proposed appeals process for the low income senior exemptions?
Absolutely. Good morning, President Goins, board members. Following your direction from the last board of directors meeting, I worked with NBS, made contact with the county's Department of Finance and Assessor Recorder and other agencies that have a similar low-income seniors tax exemption, and created the recommendation that you see attached to the board packet. And I think it's going to be a fairly easy to manage system. What we did find out is that it won't be the County of Marin that would process any reimbursement to the members, to the taxpayers. It would be us that would need to evaluate, work through a system to determine if they are qualified. And then it would be a reimbursement direct from the MWPA to the taxpayer. Looking at several different agencies, it looked like the TAM Unified School District had probably the most thorough, but also one of the simplest processes. And that you see listed in the board report. That also includes creating a subcommittee of the board to review those applications. And it seemed like it was fairly streamlined, and based on the numbers that I gave you in the staff report, I don't think it's going to be a terrible burden on the MWPA staff. Open to any comments or suggestions that you may have before, and we can make any changes to that staff report and the recommendation prior to the board meeting.
Okay, so thank you, Executive Officer Brown. And I will ask folks just to raise your hand. So we just maintain some order here. I see Julie McMillan has raised her hand. Director McMillan. And you're muted. There you go.
Thank you. Good morning. Just wondering if appeals could be also submitted via email instead of in writing. And also wondering if there could be a prescribed time period for us to get back to people once they submit their appeal, like 60 days or something like that. And lastly, I'm wondering if we should somehow put this up on the website so that it's pretty transparent and people can see it.
So let me, absolutely, I will add the email, and I'll add our info at MWPA or windwildfire.org as email. I'll build in a 60-day timeline for review, and it'll definitely go onto the website under our low-income senior tax exemption.
One other small little edit on the first page. It says, as specified in the ordinance adopted by Measure M. I know you meant Measure C.
Absolutely, we meant Measure C.
Yeah, I know.
Good catch.
Thank you.
Oh, wow. How did I miss that one?
Thank you, Director McMillan. Other directors, any comments on the suggestions? Director McEntee, yes, please.
I agree with the staff recommendation to just do this for the first year. I think it's, it's a new thing. And I think going forward, I don't think we need to have an elaborate appeal process. If there's somebody who moves into the area and later wants to deal with that, we can deal with it on a one-off basis.
Thank you, Director McEntee. So clarify, please, Director McEntee, was that your comment that you do not believe that we need an ongoing process?
No, I think the recommendation was that we just do it for this year, for the first year, and I think that's a good idea. I think we should put some limitations around it, like
Okay.
unless staff thinks that we could just do that kind of ongoing, but I think it's going to come up just in this beginning part.
Okay. Thank you.
And if I can address as far as what the load for staff would be, I think if it was ongoing, one of the pieces of language I did play around with and did not end up including, and I'll look to the five of you for direction, is that we could put in language is that people can apply and for the exemption or appeal the exemption in their first year of eligibility, whether they are a new property owner,
Right.
Just became a senior, or their financial status has just changed to make them eligible. And I think the number terrible burden on staff.
I'm sorry. Am I the only one, Mark, that you froze up on us there? Your last comment.
Yeah.
Am I frozen still, or can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes, we can hear you now, and you're moving now.
All right. So where do I need to pick up from?
About the last two sentences.
Okay. So I don't think it would be a terrible burden for our staff if we change the language to be the first year of eligibility, meaning that if someone moves in, someone becomes a senior, or their financial status changes. I think the numbers of those that we would see, I think it's manageable within staff.
Okay, we have suggested wording change then.
And I'll, like I said, I had already started to draft that, and we ended up not going with that. But if you guys direct me to add that to the language for the staff report for the board meeting, I'll be happy to do it.
Thank you. I see Director McMillan, you have your hand up.
I like that change. I think that's a fair change to make. I don't think people should be frozen out forever when their circumstances change.
Excellent. Thank you, Director McMillan. And I agree. Any other comments? So I'm hearing agreement that we're would have the appeals process, and Executive Officer Brown is going to change the wording to appeal your first year, but the subsequent appeals could be for new residents or people with changed circumstances could appeal in future years. So in essence, it's an ongoing open process for those with changed circumstances or new individuals. Is that correct?
That's what I'm understanding from the conversation. And just to kind of add one more step based on the website comment Director McMillan gave, we'll make sure that 1 year of eligibility change is in, that wording is also on the website.
Okay. I see Director Phillips, please.
Trying to get off mute there, sorry. I'm wondering, and you looked at it far more thoroughly than I, so it's a wonder. I'm wondering if on an annual basis, we should have those that have received the exemption acknowledge their status is still the same. In other words, if their income went down, they're now qualified. And I doubt that they're going to, think about or even voluntarily report if it goes up. And so I'm wondering if we should have a postcard or something that goes out to them to say, my status remains the same.
Actually, the way the ordinance is written, it requires an annual
Oh, it does?
application.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent. Any further comments or discussion? I think we need a motion. Is that correct?
No, I don't believe we need a motion. You've given, as the executive committee, you've given me direction to help inform the staff letter or staff report for our board of directors meeting.
Okay.
Is that correct, Megan?
I believe so, and it may be my error, but I don't know if you called for public comment on this item.
Okay. No further. Is there any public comment?
I'm looking for any raised hands in the audience. If you'd like to raise your hand for public comment, please do so now. And it looks like there's no public comment.
Excellent. Thank you, Allison. So we're clear then. There is not a need for motion. Is that correct? Okay, thank you. So Executive Officer Brown, sounds like you're going to revise this report for presentation on the 19th for the an ad hoc. I guess we're going to set it up.
Yeah. So I'll summarize what I received from you. You guys like it? Mostly what I put in. I'll definitely change the measure M to measure C, and I will include an email as well as a physical mail. I will put a 60-day timeline for us to return back. We will include the language on the website, and we will add 1 year of eligibility change.
Excellent. Thanks for your summary.
Okay.
Okay. Let's move on to item 7, the update on the environmental compliance guidance from Remy Moose Manley LLP, and discuss our next steps. So our general counsel, Megan Aceto, will update the committee environmental compliance process and consider appointing an ad hoc committee to revise an RFP for environmental consulting services.
Thank you, Director Goins. We did receive a confidential memo from our outside counsel, Sabrina Teller and Jim Moose. And for the public, just perhaps to feel some assurance, they will be providing a public version of this memo before the next board meeting. So there are some confidential and sort of sensitive issues sort of within the current draft, and that's why we're keeping that confidentiality presently, but there will be a very detailed version of this that will be public upcoming. So I just want to assure the public that we're not trying to keep this hidden.
Megan, I'm sorry, could you just clarify for the public why some of it's confidential, like just so that people don't think that there's anything untoward?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So we just are trying to evaluate the risks associated with different CEQA options. And so in some ways that does spell out whether the attorneys are laying out where we may be vulnerable if we take one path versus another. And so we just don't, we need to take those into consideration as a board, or the board needs to take those into consideration, but we don't want to sort of advertise that one way puts us in a more liable situation. Yes.
Director Phillips.
Uh, Perhaps for future reference, I would suggest if we have confidential legal advice that be dealt with in a closed session, which is more appropriate, it seems to me, since we're not including the community. The meeting is open, so any matters that are discussed here certainly are open to the public. And so I'm not sure, since this is addressed to us confidential, it'd be awkward discussion, it seems to me. I'm not sure what we should talk about, not talk about, since it is open to the public, for maybe future reference.
I appreciate that comment, and we had given some consideration to that, and we're in a fortunate situation in that we do not have any current threats of litigation or anything that would allow us to go into closed session at this point in time. So we wanted to be able to move forward with the discussion and didn't have means to hold a closed session at this point. And most of what's in the memo is actually fine to discuss. We just had a few pieces that we wanted to not speak about openly. So feel free to have a conversation about the different approaches that we can take. And I feel confident that we can get something accomplished with what we have here. But I do appreciate the sentiment and understand the desire to maintain that confidentiality. And when and if there's a need for a closed session, we will do it. So just to summarize for the public's benefit as well as the executive committee, the attorneys, Sabrina Teller primarily worked on this, and she'll also be at the upcoming meeting, at the board meeting. So we'll be available to answer questions if there are more detailed questions than those that I can answer now. She prepared or provided us with information about different types of compliance that are available. So there are different levels that of analysis required by CEQA, depending on whether an exemption may apply to a project or to a specific project, or whether a more detailed initial study and then potentially a negative declaration, mitigated negative dec, or environmental impact report are required. And so we are looking at both the core projects of MWPA, which will be reflected in the upcoming work plans, and at whether MWPA's member agencies with their local projects, which are funded by MWPA, what type of analysis would be appropriate for both types of projects, and if there's some level of analysis that could sort of be an umbrella over all of those projects. And so there's some discussion of which types of exemptions may be most appropriate for many of those local projects, and for some of the MWPA projects, which include the class 4 and class 33 exemptions under CEQA. Those are categorical exemptions, and so can be addressed fairly easily at the outset of a project. And once a notice of exemption is filed, it is a public document. And if there's any question, there's a statute of limitations that was relatively short to question those exemptions, which is 35 days. So there may be quite a few projects that fall under that type of exemption, one of those categories of exemptions. Those need to be supported by information and supporting documentation. So we would look to the local agencies to provide that, and then MWPA could provide that for its own projects. There's also the CAL FIRE, CAL VTP, Vegetation Treatment Program, programmatic EIR is also available for some of the projects that we undertaken by MWPA and by local agencies, as long as those are within SRA, which is the state responsibility area. And there is quite a bit of overlap, we imagine, but I mean, in the territory that we're covering for the jurisdictions that fall under MWPA, there are SRA, and we are aware that we have the PEIR that we could rely on. And so it was set up in a fairly user-friendly way, the PEIR, and that there's a checklist that was developed at the time it was adopted that that allows for local agencies who are doing work within the treatable area of the SRA to sort of tier off of it, but using that checklist. So it gives you an opportunity to to rely on that larger programmatic level document through the use of this checklist. And so that is available for projects that would be in those treatable areas, but that would only apply there and would not apply to areas outside of that. So it can't cover everything under the MWPA jurisdiction, only the projects that are in SRA. Once the project specific analysis is done, which is basically doing that checklist, which is referred to as a PSA, then a notice of determination would be filed and sent to the Department of Forestry, also just for their tracking. And that type of notice would then set in motion a 30-day statute of limitations in case anyone had a concern about reliance on the PEIR through one of those project-specific analysis checklists. And then finally, another option that is available to MWPA is to provide a programmatic EIR for all Measure C territory, which would allow MWPA to do an analysis specific to Marin, and to that would also cover projects that were both would allow for local projects and local agencies to tier off of this larger Marin specific programmatic EIR. And fortunately, because there is quite a bit of SRA within our jurisdiction, that programmatic level, even if it would be Marin specific, could still use quite a bit of information likely that is already in that Cal VTP PEIR. And so it would potentially make the process of developing our programmatic EIR less onerous than it might be otherwise. And so it can also, there's some advantages to doing a Marin specific PEIR in that it does kind of simplify the process for local agencies, and it keeps the information, it's so specific to our area that we aren't relying on a larger document that's a statewide document that may not apply as directly, and we can address more local concerns there, and hopefully get some really helpful public input in the development of that programmatic EIR, and work with our environmental partners on developing that as well. So that is an option that may take a bit of time to develop, but even I think in part because of the existence of the SRA and the reliance or the ability to use that PEIR information, it would not only shorten the time that it takes to develop that, but it would also allow us to sort of think about the mitigation measures and all of those types of things that can sometimes take a little bit longer to develop. So there's a lot of advantage there are some advantages definitely to thinking about developing that type of document. So I think if that's feels like enough information for now, I'm happy to answer questions. And then again, the questions that come forward at this meeting can then be incorporated, and we can reach out to, I'll be speaking with Sabrina Teller after this to sort of let her know what the remaining questions the executive committee has and whether there's more guidance we need. And then she will again prepare the memo for the board meeting that would be public and available to everyone.
And President Goins, if I may add a couple items before we go to questions from the executive committee members, because
Yes, Executive
some
Officer.
of my items may help either defer some questions or help change some questions. In order for Remy Moose Manley to really quantify what our project of our scope of work looked like, or our plan of work was, I took all of our projects that looked like they may need to be go through a CEQA compliance process, put them in a spreadsheet, added a column, and I got input from each of the local agencies that said how they were going to handle that CEQA compliance. Another column was, did they need help with that compliance? And then the third column was whether or not it was in the state responsibility area.
Right.
And then, as we know, also in the state responsibility area, we also have the treatable areas that are part of the Cal VTP. And looking at the treatable areas of the Cal VTP within Marin's SRA, a very quick analysis shows that most, if not all, of those projects are in the treatable area. So we're in good shape there. And the great news is that all the local agencies had a good handle on the compliance and had a good route. And with the exception of one particular project, all the agencies said they did not need help with compliance. However, I am prepared to help them with any notices of exemptions that they may need to do. And I'll work with county staff in order to process that notice of exemption. And then if we need anything more complicated than a notice of exemption, then I have a list of reputable environmental firms that have a proven track record in Marin that I could provide to the local agencies to help with that process. And I believe the quantity of work that would be required is well within the purchasing authorities of those agencies without having to go through a contractual process. And then finally, anything that's in the SRA, even if it's not in Marin County Fire Department's jurisdiction, Marin County Fire Department, being a contract county for CAL FIRE, automatically has a responsibility for a portion of that compliance within the SRA. So I'll use Novato Fire as an example. Mount Burdell is in the SRA and is also in the Novato Fire District. So if there's a project in the SRA in that area, both Novato Fire and Marin County Fire are lead agencies, and the county fire staff is very good at using the Cal VTP process in order to go through compliance.
Thank you, Executive Officer Brown. Let's see, Director McEntee, clarifying questions.
Yeah, Mark, you and I have talked about the role the operations committee and some of the folks like Dan Schwartz and some of the other city managers could provide in terms of mentoring for these kinds of things. I think aside from providing that list, I think it would be great to create a little subcommittee or some kind of, expertise that could be available in managing that process, particularly the city managers who've dealt with this extensively and have a lot of, they could really just kind of cut through it. I think that would be really nice to have, if not like a group that they could resource, or if not, some sort of document. But I've said, and you and I've talked about this, I've talked to Dan about this too, that I would love Dan to do some kind of training for all of those staff people to kind of help them get grounded on this is the road you're going to take. This is kind of the usual thing you need to look at. This is where you need to tailor it for your specific area.
Excellent. Mark.
Yeah, to Director McEntee's point, we actually had a class hosted by some of the environmental compliance personnel at the County of Marin. They called it CEQA 101. It was about an hour and a half class that all of our member agencies had a representative there. So we are starting on that process. I don't think that class is a one-time only, and also I don't think it is the only thing that we need to do. So we'll definitely continue down that path.
I think the suggestion is that we consider an ad hoc a cadre of experts that would be available. So well crafted, Director McEntee. Thank you very much. Any other comments, clarifying questions? Director Phillips, please.
Thank you. And I'm trying to think of how to formulate my question, but it relates to this. If we have a strategic plan, well, let me back up a half step. The community is going to be interested in what we're going to be doing and over what period of time. And so therefore, my question is, if we come up with a strategic plan, is that going to be sufficient then to make a CEQA determination? Or in the sub part of that question is, how long does a CEQA process take if it's necessary? I know it's general and I apologize, but frankly, I don't know a lot about CEQA. I mean, I know what it is, and but in this context, frankly, I don't know much about it.
Yeah, I'm happy to respond if that would be useful. And I asked for this type of, so for a programmatic EIR in association with sort of the strategic plan or a larger long-term plan, such as a 5-year, if you're looking forward 5 years to what would, or even 10 to what you would be doing, what MWPA has sort of on the books or is hoping to accomplish over a certain amount of time. That's one of the sort of ideal times to do a programmatic EIR, because it is meant to cover something that will last quite a while. So often jurisdictions will do a programmatic EIR for a general plan or a long-term planning document of some sort, so that it's for a project that you know will take quite a while and there will be different components to it. And so you sort of try to get the bigger picture out front at the beginning. So in this instance, that this could be a good opportunity to do that as the MWPA is starting its planning process and looking forward to what would be coming in the years ahead. And then over time, as this project specific analysis is required, potentially for a yearly work plan or even a more specific one to a local agency project, that would then tier off of that higher level, longer term PEIR. And that that allows when there's more detail known about the specific projects, or if there's more detail is available in a specific work plan for a specific year, it allows the agency to then do more robust environmental analysis at that time once there's more known about the specific project. So the PEIR is basically a long-term document that then can be relied on for years after that. So in terms of timing, I did ask for an estimate from Sabrina, who has done this type of vegetation management type program EIR before, and she said she would estimate a minimum of 8 to 9 months to prepare it. But that doesn't mean that work would have to stop in the meantime, because there are many projects that fall under MWPA that could rely on existing exemptions and other ways to sort of keep work moving forward until that programmatic EIR is ready. That could also include reliance on the Cal VTP PEIR, because there are definitely projects, as Mark mentioned, that would qualify for that type of program specific analysis under the PEIR. Under the Cal VTP PEIR.
Thank you. I did notice or note on your page 11 in response to Bruce's first question, says we don't have enough detail about most of the projects in the pending projects list to make a recommendation whether they qualify for the exemption or not. So presumably in the strategic plan, we'll sort that out. Yes. I mean, I don't think we want to wait 10 years to do the first thing, right? Because we got hung up. That's not what our community is expecting in any case.
No, exactly. And I know that there's quite a bit of hope to continue moving forward and not let, although everyone wants to do a very thorough job with environmental analysis, there's quite a bit under CEQA that can be done short of doing the full EIR at this stage, that work could be done up to that point. And then once the programmatic EIR is in place, assuming that that's something that MWPA would want to do, then that can be relied on from that point forward. But even up until that point, there are quite a few options for CEQA compliance.
Thank you.
Mark and Bruce will work our way through that. So thanks for your time.
Great question and comment. So Director McMillan has a question or comment?
Yeah, I may have missed this in the discussion, but I'm wondering if we're contemplating that the programmatic EIR would also cover the area that's in the SRA, or if it would be only the area that is outside of the SRA.
Excellent question.
That's a great question. Yes, I think we actually have options there. I think that the initial thought was to cover the full area and then note within the full area, including SRA, and basically pick up the information from the VTP PEIR and include it, reference that throughout our PEIR for anything that would qualify as treatable area. And so that was sort of the initial thought, though I think there is some option to carve out SRA from the programmatic EIR, which would address sort of everything but SRA. But there's some that might be more cumbersome than it's worth, I think, in terms of if we can just reference the PEIR pretty routinely in the overall programmatic EIR, then that would suffice to sort of accomplish the same thing, but keep everything in one document.
Okay, thank you. Director Rodoni and then Director McEntee.
Yeah, thank you. Just to follow up on that discussion, I do think that it should be inclusive, because I think it's long-term better protection for the agency to have included it all in the programmatic. And kind of with the programmatic EIR, you can kind of throw everything in it, including the kitchen sink, and that allows you to get a lot of coverage. Doesn't mean you avoid avoid the work later on, but it certainly protects you. I think what I'm hearing is that Mark's saying we're definitely okay this year with the work plan. And so I think given the timeline of a programmatic EIR, it would be good if the operations committee plans the next work plan with that in mind, to target things that might be exempt or might be in SAR, those kind of approaches, because it doesn't look like the programmatic ER could be ready till maybe the following season. So in anticipation to that, to still doing work, I think it'd be great if the operations committee could focus on the things that might be already exempt and take advantage of that. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rodoni. Excellent comments. Director McAtee, please.
Yes. Megan, I hear you that it would probably be simpler to just kind of incorporate the Cal VTP programmatic EIR by reference and then kind of highlight what's different. But I'm guessing that the treatments that we're going to propose are not going to be any more extensive than what's proposed by the Cal VTP. So I'm guessing that anything that we would propose, and this is where I'm curious from Mark, like there's not anything that's going to be more intensive than what's proposed by Cal VTP that we would propose. I think everything we're doing is very light touch relative to that. So I would think that everything would really be congruent with that. And as far as the LRAs, there are a lot of areas where the local responsibility area is right across the street from the state responsibility area. So it's basically the same vegetation, basically the same flora and fauna. There's not going to be a ton of difference there. And my person that I always talk to at the Board of Forestry is they're super friendly and helpful and willing to kind of share what they've done, the work they've done. And I think that just extending that to the LRAs should be, I'm thinking, and I'm hoping the environmental consultant will, use what we've got there and not have to, reinvent a whole bunch of extra work. So if we're not doing any treatments that are more intensive, and there might be some specific kind of, flora, fauna, topography that are in the LRAs that are just a little bit different, but it should really be just extend what we've already got there with the state program. Is that the sense that you've gotten?
Absolutely, Director McAtee. And also with Marin County Fire being a contract county with CAL FIRE, there's a very close relationship with CAL FIRE and the Board of Forestry. So we'll be at plenty of support. And your point is so well taken that across the street, it could be LRA to SRA. And then let's not forget the federal responsibility area quite a bit. And so we're going to have NEPA that will be in, because some of our projects will likely go across all three. One project could go across all three jurisdictions, LRA, SRA, and FRA. So we'll need to make sure that we're compliant. It's there. Another advantage with the CAL FIRE VTP, and if we go with a programmatic EIR, is it doesn't just focus on the terrain, the plants. It also focuses on the habitat and any endangered species. The CAL FIRE VTP already touches local agencies have been there to consider endangered species work, but the programmatic EIR can include that information as well.
Excellent, thank you. Director McMillan, please.
I'm just wondering, Mark and Megan, if you have thoughts about how the environmental groups would respond to these different approaches, and if they would be happier with a programmatic EIR. I assume they would, and if that would be a good PR move.
It's a question. Do we want to hold that for discussion or public comment? We have received on record, and this is board discussion, we have received on record correspondence suggesting that this is something we should consider. And in fact, advocating for it, for a programmatic EIR, and we've been seeking public counsel. So thank you, Director McMillan. It's a good question. I guess I just answered that. We have received suggestion that we indeed pursue a programmatic EIR. So yes, thank you. I'd like to make a couple of questions and comment, please. So this is something that some of you maybe have done previously, know what this entails, and some of you really probably don't have a clue. My comment is that I think we're talking about an ad hoc committee, a couple of people to figure this out, and prepare an RFP. But the process, the decision that's going to be made is going to have implications for all parties concerned. The smallest partner to the biggest partners, some with great capacity and some with none. But to do a programmatic EIR, you need to touch the ground. You need to talk to the public. You need to address the problem. You identify what actions you're going to take over what time frame. You have to, and so Director McEntee was asking the types of projects, for example. I mean, we actually need to poll all 17 members for, what are your intentions? What are you going to do? And I just want to be real clear. A comment is that not everybody is ready to answer that question. What are you proposing to do over the next 10 years or 20 years? So this is a big decision for us to make. And I think that we should go slow. I think that we should figure out, are there some data points that we need information on prior to making a decision? Particularly, what is the process? What are the timelines? Who are the principals that are going to be involved? What are their roles and responsibilities? Let's say we hire an environmental consultant. That's great, but we have town managers. We have community service directors. We have fire chiefs. We have town, and I'm forgetting, all who will have to be tapped to tap their people. And they're going to have to draw on resources, and they're going to have to suck some energy out of whatever it is that they're currently doing to answer the questions necessary to prepare a programmatic EIR. And so I just want to be really clear that this is a big decision, and it's, just because it's popular doesn't mean we necessarily need to do it or have to do it. But we need to make a fully informed, impact analysis and disclose to all partners, all members, in essence, what it is that we're proposing to undertake here. So that's a big question and comment. But and so my comment is that we may need to do some more data collection before we can move. Really, we need to move forward in an informed fashion. And I think that there's some data that we're going to need, which is process timeline. Who's responsible, what kind of burden we might be putting upon them, the kinds of questions that we're going to be asking them, so that when we bring this to the full board, they're informed and they can make that decision to say, yes, we'll do it. And yes, we're going to take it on. And it's not going to be an 8-month process. This is going to take, I think it's going to probably take 1.5 years, maybe 2.
Your point is well taken. If I may just interject, I flagged the RFP issue because at our last board meeting, there was a focus on let's hurry and get this out the door. But I definitely think your point is well taken. And I think part of what's useful in the analysis we've received so far from the attorneys is that there are, short of the programmatic EIR, we can continue doing work. It's not necessarily such a huge road bump that CEQA was not stopping us from moving forward, because we can still do a good job and in good faith comply with it in the process of developing that programmatic EIR. So, and up to the time when it's actually completed, it doesn't mean that work has to stop. So perhaps that type of information will help the board feel more comfortable slowing the process down as well.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Megan. Let's see, Director McEntee, please.
I just wanted to address President Goins. I think you're right that we should, be slow and careful about how we're doing this, so that we're not wasteful in how we frame this up, and that we are making good use of our resources that we have internally. But I also just wanted to kind of address directly. I know that Mark and I have talked about this, Jason and I have talked about this, that there is some just a little bit of a knee-jerk concern around, like, oh my goodness, if we do a full EIR, MMWD did one, it took them 8 years. There's some fear around how much time and money and bureaucracy and potential roadblocks there are in doing a full EIR process. I think what we want to evaluate is, let's put that aside for the moment and evaluate what we think is the most appropriate use of our time and resources. Like if we're thinking that we're going to be doing these types of treatments, roughly, as Bruce pointed out, not every agency knows exactly what they're going to be doing for the next 10 years, but they, we kind of know roughly, whether we're at the, mechanical pulling level or whether we're at the, we know kind of roughly where we are in terms of intensity. And if we know that, and we know that agencies are going to, we know that we from this document that we're only the lead agency on our own projects. But if we know everybody's going to be doing these types of things, and everybody's going to be doing these onesie, twosie, categorical exemption here, smaller EIR here, I think the decision should be made of, given that, would doing an EIR streamline that whole thing? Do it once. If it takes 2 years, it takes 2 years. And something I brought up to Chief Weber, and I think I brought up to you, Mark, as well, is if it is something where it starts to take, it seems like it's going to take 2 years, or it's going to something like that, this is where we start to reach out to our legislators and say, look, this is something that both Assemblymember Levine and Senator McGuire have made personal commitments to making sure that that wildfire prevention is a priority. And if we are unable to do the work of this agency because of some bureaucratic process that they could help us out with in the legislature, that's where we need to pull them in. So I want us to make the decision not based on whether we think it's a burdensome, bureaucratic process, but whether we think it is, it makes sense. So that's my framing of it.
Thank you, Director McEntee, and I hope you're not misconstruing my comments. I'm making the point that we need to be informed on the magnitude, the breadth, and the depth of, and the roles and responsibilities. I'm not knee-jerking here, and I'm not fearful. We want to do the right thing. So, but I just want to be very clear that we need to go into this in an informed fashion. And inform those who will share the burden of our decision. But thank you for your comments. And Director McMillan, and we're still in the question comment stage. At some point, one of us is going to say, "Wait, we're getting into discussion." So
yeah, we're kind of getting into deliberations here. I apologize. Mine was probably more of a deliberative comment.
Yeah, good. Director McMillan, please.
I'm just wondering if the scope of the programmatic EIR can cover 10 years or 15 years or 20 years. It seems like technology is going to evolve, our needs are going to evolve, and it seems like, I don't know if that's a reasonable scope. I don't know what a reasonable scope timeline would be, time scope.
Excellent question. And perhaps, Megan, that's a question that you can chase down for us in sort of that discussion and deliberative process.
Sure. I can respond now if it's useful. I'm familiar with these from other work I've done. So what will happen is that if you set a time frame of 10 years and that's sort of everything that you want to cover, and then some new information comes about that substantially changes the type of work or the ability to do it, and any sort of substantial change to the project scope or to the project description would then require some additional evaluation at that time. So it doesn't have to be a sort of static document. It can be revised as necessary and updated as necessary.
Excellent. Thank you. Do we have any more questions or comments? I think thanks everybody. This is really a great discussion. So I think it's time for us to go to public comment. I'm assuming there'll be great interest in this on the part of the public. So Allison Fullis, do we have any public comment?
Thank you. I'm looking for any raised hands. We received one chat comment. I'll read aloud to the group. Brad Gallup commented, are there federally listed species in affected areas which might require an EIS as well as an EIR? That was responded to by Mark Brown in the Q&A. Our next public comment will come from Mike. Mike, you may unmute yourself.
Thank you, Board of Directors. My question is more of a general one. I was just wondering, obviously there is a lot to be done, and my question is, when is the staffing of the actual agency going to commence? Thank you.
The question, excuse me, was when is the staffing of the agency going to commence?
Yes, what like when will obviously there's going to be a lot of hard work to be done on behalf of the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority. When will the staff, when will staffers start being recruited and hired to make sure all of these plans are going to be effectively implemented?
Okay, I think I can respond to that. Mike, in this meeting today, item number 9 is update on organization structure and staffing options. We are actively addressing the staffing implications associated with all of these discussions. And that is work yet to be done. I believe that we're going to, well, if you could wait for item number 9, please, and see if there's any further questions, that would probably be most appropriate.
Excellent, thank you.
I would suggest also that there may be some iterations of staffing. You know, we've hired Executive Officer Brown, and we have some contract work with administrative and finance and Allison, of course. But there will be some iterations as we mature and understand the issues. I think we're going to have a dynamic staffing, but right now we're going to try to make our best shot based on item number 9.
Excellent, thank you.
Other public comments, Allison?
Thank you. There's no further public comment.
Excellent. Let's, I guess it's time for discussion. Bring it back to the committee. So discussion direction to staff. I think the suggestion is that we appoint an ad hoc subcommittee to further pursue this, made up of 2 members of the executive committee. That is the recommendation of Executive Officer Brown and staff. Executive Officer Brown and Director McEntee, please.
And let me just clarify a little bit. I recommend that this subcommittee does not have to be solely from the executive committee. I think we have a lot of talent throughout the entire board, and I think we should reach out through the entire board for that ad hoc subcommittee.
Okay, thank you, Director, Executive Officer Brown. So Director McEntee, please.
I was just volunteering to be on the committee.
Okay.
And while I don't want to volunteer someone who's not present, I'm sure that Director Kohler would be interested. And if we asked her, I bet you she would be very willing to participate.
Okay. And I would volunteer to be on the committee too.
Yeah.
Director Phillips, please.
I just want to say that my remaining period on the executive committee is short term. So while I won't volunteer for that reason, the Santa Fe member may wish to volunteer. So I'd like to keep that option open.
Okay.
Gary, is this your last meeting with us?
I don't know. It probably is.
Probably one, maybe one more.
Yeah, probably one more. December's swearing in. So yeah.
Is there any further discussion? I'm hearing us moving towards the appointment of an open appointment opportunity for committee members. What am I missing here?
And if I may clarify one thing before the committee is established, this would be a subcommittee not only to work toward the RFP, which is what's indicated in the agenda language, but sort of have a broader scope, it sounds like, to also be a committee that's working on developing questions and kind of the scope of work that we were thinking of, which would eventually fall under the RFP. But this is to do sort of that preliminary work that you were interested in doing, as I understand it. Bruce, is that right?
Excellent. Yes. Yes. I see agreement. Director McEntee, please.
Yeah, Megan, I'm glad you said that, because what I was going to ask was, what is the scope of this committee, and when would we want to report back? And yeah, let's just sort of clarify that a little bit more, because it could certainly go off in many different directions. But maybe Mark and Megan can give a little bit more guidance on what you'd like to, what do you need from us?
Megan, if you want to start.
Sure. I think what would be really helpful at this stage would just be to work with I guess it would, if it's just going to be an ad hoc committee, that we need to keep it at smaller than a quorum of this group, then I'd ask that it just be 2 members at this stage, only to work toward developing questions that need to be answered before the board meeting by our outside counsel, and then that need to be included in that memo that they'll be bringing back to us, so that then at the board level, the board could do another appointment of an ad hoc committee of the board that would work on all the more detailed stuff going forward. But right now, I think the critical issue is just making sure that what we're presenting to the board at the meeting on the 19th, in that public memo that will go out from the outside counsel, includes everything that you as an executive committee think is necessary to do, to make decisions at the board level. So if at this stage we could either have just Bruce and Sashi potentially, or we could use Barbara, I believe, since she's an alternate, but just 2 of you, that would be great, just to work with Mark and I so that we can get that honed in for the upcoming meeting. And then from there, another ad hoc could be formed. Sorry, my dog's barking. Another ad hoc could be formed at the board meeting on the 19th after we have that memo and everything to work with.
So
there are kind of 2 stages here. Yeah, sorry, Bruce, go ahead.
Question, Megan, is there anything to preclude our executive officer Brown from running a product up the flagpole to an individual director? That is there anything to preclude Mark from doing that, reaching out to other expertise within the board to get comments on
Oh,
a
no,
product?
not at all. Yeah, that would be, that could
Okay, so I think we can, I think we can crack this nut of involvement by limiting it to 2, which is not a majority of the executive committee, and charge Executive Officer Brown to chase down the expertise, the people who have been, very engaged and articulate in helping us, stay on the right track. So first, Director Rodoni, your hand first, and Director McEntee next.
All right, I'll be quick. At some point, Mark, if you could develop the budget impacts of all this, and I think there may be different pots of money that need to support it, but I'm not sure. So thank you.
Yep.
Excellent suggestion. Director McEntee.
Yeah, so just so I understand, there's kind of a 2-step process here. What staff needs is just a couple of members of the executive committee to just sort of clarify what the questions and what's going to be put into the board packet for the full board's discussion. And then at that board meeting, then Bruce would call for volunteers or would figure out some appointment of a full board subcommittee to do. And then that full board subcommittee would do what?
From my understanding, it would be to sort of carry it from there forward if the board feels it's necessary to have a subcommittee that would be working on sort of determining the real scope for the RFP, determining the impact on local agencies, sort of the issues that I think Director Goins raised in terms of maybe the mechanics of actually making this PEIR happen, if that's the direction.
Got it. Okay, got it. I wanted to understand what you were envisioning as far as process. Okay, sounds good.
And someone's going to put this in writing, right?
I'll take it.
This meeting record will put it in writing, right? Thank you, Executive Officer Brown. Okay. Well, wonderful. I don't. So do we need a motion on this, or do we? No.
No, I think we're fine. I think we've gotten the direction, and then also know who the members Mark and I can work with on clarifying what needs to be in that memo. So I think we're set.
Excellent. Well, the adventure begins. This has been a wonderful discussion. Thanks, everybody. Let's move on to agenda item 8. Agenda item 8, update on executive committee duties and responsibilities. So, Mark Brown, will you please present the staff report on the potential duties and responsibilities of the executive committee and seek direction from this committee regarding those duties?
Absolutely. I, based on our last executive committee meeting, I took notes and made the suggested changes from your committee and presented that in the staff report. And so I'm open to any further adjustments, and with the hopes that we can bring it to the entire board on our next board meeting for approval.
Okay. Let's see. So this is questions, clarifying questions, comments, I believe. I know that there will be some suggestions here. So Director McMillan, please.
I'm just wondering if we should have something expressly in the duties regarding interfacing with the finance committee. And I know Bruce is a member of the finance committee, so there already is informal overlap, but I think it might be good to have formal overlap. And I was also thinking that for all ad hoc committees, I think it would be wise to have a member of the executive committee also serving on all ad hoc committees, so that there's some continuity and reporting.
I'm taking notes.
Okay, that's it.
Thank you.
Director Phillips, please.
Thanks. No, I think you've done an excellent job on this. I just had one question as I read through the duties and responsibilities. Uncertain as to what test controversial and innovative ideas and suggestions. Test, what does that mean?
Kind of get the temperature of the water to see if it's something that we want to pursue or if the risk is too great. Would you like would you suggest rewording that to make it?
I just wasn't sure what maybe explore or something like that. Test. I'm not sure what test.
I'll change test to explore. I like that better.
Okay. And then second,
Mark, why don't you remove controversial too? I think that's leading.
Okay.
Yeah,
If that's okay with the.
yeah, no, that's a good point.
Explore innovative ideas and suggestions.
Yeah. The other thing that struck me, and I'm not sure where it fits, Bruce, maybe you can help me with this. That is reviewing on a periodic basis, perhaps annually, the executive director. That is Mark. I'm not sure your exact title. Is that going to be done by the executive committee or the ad hoc committee, or how do you envision that?
It was my understanding that I forget where I've read this, but it was the executive committee would initiate the review and then bring it to the full board.
It's it's under the executive committee common responsibilities. The executive committee may conduct the executive officers' performance evaluation based on a set format and criteria established by the board. Page 1, second to last paragraph.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you for that. I guess I overlooked it. Work precedent, study, evaluate. Where is it again? I'm sorry, Mike.
Second to last paragraph on page 1, last sentence.
The executive. Okay, no, I apologize. It clearly is there. Thank you.
Any other? I have a comment, a suggested addition under duties and responsibilities. There is nothing here that mentions the organization or staffing oversight regarding recommendation regarding organization or staffing. So I suggest that one of the bullets you add under the third bullet under duties and responsibilities, communications outreaches, that you had something around organization, composition, and staffing.
Okay.
And let's see, and Director McEntee, please.
I don't think that's the executive committee's job. I think that's Mark's job. I mean, we can review him on that, but I wouldn't think that we would be in any way responsible for figuring out, except for from a budget standpoint. You know, we tell him how much he's allowed to spend, and he can spend it on whatever staffing to achieve the goals that we want. I wouldn't want us to get into staffing decisions at the board or executive committee level.
It's advise and comment, not getting into. I strongly believe that it needs to be there as a bullet. It is work with the president and the executive officer and other committee to advise and comment upon the development of the organization's blank. So it advise and comment on staffing. That's our job. We're the think tank. We're supposed to process this stuff and make recommendations. So I feel strongly it should be in there.
Advise and comment on regarding organizational staffing.
Organization and staffing.
Okay.
But it's still it is Mark, the executive officer's job, Director McEntee, to execute. It is ours to recommend. have one other suggestion on the second page, the last bullet. Currently states work with the president and executive officers to develop the short, medium, and long-term strategic plan for the organization and coordinate team and trust building among all members. I would like to say, just like to add, have it say work with the president and the executive officer to and insert design the procedures for the development of the short, medium, and long-term strategic plan.
Okay.
We have a lot to work through as to the composition of that undertaking. It's going to be it's a challenging endeavor. So I'd like us to not just develop the short-term plan. That's the work. What I want to do is us to be involved in the design of the process to get the work done. Any other comments? I think not. So is it time to move for public comment?
I'm
Allison?
looking for any public. Thank you. I'm looking for any public comment from the audience. It looks like there's no public comment.
Okay, thank you, Allison. So let's bring this back to the committee for discussion and direction to staff. It appears to me that we've already provided direction. We're getting ahead of ourselves here, folks. So Executive Officer Brown, are you comfortable with direction?
I am.
Excellent. So let's then, thanks everybody for your input, really great input. Let's move to item 9, which was update and organization structure and staffing options. So the executive committee is being asked to discuss and consider the structure of our MWPA organization and staffing and to provide direction to staff. Mark Brown, please, will you lead this discussion?
Absolutely. As you guys know, I am right now the only staff member of the MWPA that is actually employed by the MWPA, but we have several contracts that are in place to provide what is getting the work done. And I do want the members of the public to know that even though I'm the only true employee, that there is a lot of work that is getting done. At the administrative level, we have a contract and agreement with Southern Marin Fire that is giving me the finance support and our board treasurer. I also have an administrative assistant through that agreement and a work location to work from. We also have numerous agreements with with different law firms to give us that legal support. And we've also been working closely with Fire Safe Marin, who's been taking the lead for getting our Chipper Day contractors out there working, and numerous other projects within our core scope of work. And then many local member agencies have moved forward with their local mitigation projects using either their own staff within their own communities or their own governmental structure. So that had continuing. So had tremendous fleet of DSpace evaluators. Several agencies used funding from MWPA to increase their DSpace evaluators within their own structure. And then the entire Ross Valley and the County of Marin partnered with Marin County Fire, providing the DSpace evaluators, and they did all of the Ross Valley and all of the Marin County Fire jurisdiction. That includes some of our smaller local agencies like Muir Beach, Stinson Beach, Bolinas, Inverness. And that group of people actually performed just a little bit over 10,000 evaluations, which I think is pretty incredible. But we do know that MWPA does need to grow in some fashion so that we can continue to be effective with our plan of work. And how we grow is going to be an important question. And I want to build our policies and structures so that we can grow as needed, contract as needed. And I think we need to have a balance between people who are employed by the MWPA, MWPA hiring contractors, or MWPA having agreements with some of our local member agencies to provide additional staff. There has been a organizational chart that has been drafted prior to actually the passage of Measure C. But I want people to kind of start with a clean palette and not be forced down a path because they see this organizational chart that had been created before we actually learned what we were. And I do have Gene Bonander working on a series of position descriptions. One position description that would be on the operational side of the shop that would help plan and institute our scope of work, plan of work. And then a couple of positions over on the admin finance side in order to make sure the wheels are turning and we have the support for the operations folks. And just because I have position descriptions being drawn up doesn't necessarily mean those positions will be employees of the MWPA. It could be the basis of an agreement that we form with one of our member agencies saying, hey, this is the quality, this is the scope of work that we need out of this person. Are you willing to enter in an agreement for this? So, and that's kind of where I'm leaning right now, is that much of our administrative and finance work, I think, can be done with agreements with our member agencies or contracts. And then over on the operations side, I do feel I need to have an employee that's part of the MWPA on that side of the shop, but I definitely am open to direction from you. And then right now, the MWPA really is not in a position to hire a large core of people. So I'm looking to continue our agreement with the Marin County Fire Department to provide the D-Space evaluators. Chief Weber is on board with that. And then as the organization matures, we can see if we continue with that relationship or if the D-Space evaluation program and maybe even fuels crew type people move over to the MWPA, or if we continue with that contract. We're just so young of an agency right now. I don't want to start head first into an organizational structure. I want to do it thoughtfully and in a way that allows us to grow or contract as needed. So definitely open to any direction from you folks.
Okay, so time for questions, clarifying questions or comments. Director Rodoni, please.
Yeah, Mark, I have a question of you regarding whether you need administrative help sort of sooner than later. I know Allison is doing a lot of this and that maybe she can continue, but it wasn't my understanding that she was doing admin for you in her role as the financial sort of admin.
So
I'm just asking, yeah.
Yeah, I have Elisa doing all of the finance piece. And then Maria at Southern Marin is helping me as an administrative assistant and helping with some of my clerical stuff. But I think you're right that I do need additional support when it comes to building our administrative management. And but I do feel that, and that's one of the position descriptions that I have Gene creating for me, but I'm not sure that that's a full-time employee right now. And that's where I feel that at this point, that's an agreement that I can have with one of our member agencies to provide that staff if they have the bandwidth. And then we also have Allison Folis from Larkspur that is clerking for us. And we're exploring to have a formal agreement between the MWPA and Larkspur to provide that
Yep. And I would just add that I'm a big fan of temp labor if you need it while we're figuring out, well, what this organization is going to look like.
And I have been researching different temp agencies that we can go for. RGS, Regional Government Services, one that keeps popping up.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Director Rodoni. Director Phillips, please.
Sure. Just a quick comment and reaction. I like Mark's approach. I think his tempo's right and his thoughtfulness with regard to the organization, how it might develop. So I fully support Mark's thoughts on this. He's in the front line. He probably knows best at this point in time. And certainly Dennis, I think, has made some key comments as well. So I just appreciate, Mark, what you've done and your thoughtfulness with regard to the approach. Thanks.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Director Phillips. Director McMillan, please.
Yeah, I agree with those comments. One of the things I heard a lot during the Measure C campaign was a reluctance by voters to create a large bureaucracy. So I think to the extent possible, we can have agreements with local agencies to get the work done. That's great. But you need to make sure that you can get the work done. So you shouldn't feel constrained by that voter perception. I mean, if you need to hire a finance director and that's what you recommend, then that's what needs to happen. So it's kind of a tricky fine line to walk.
It is.
Thank you, Director McMillan. Any other questions or comments? So Mark, can you just give me the Cliff Notes version of what it is you would like from us or from the board?
I basically validation of that thoughtful approach and the balance of MWPA employees versus contractors versus agreements with member agencies, that you support that direction. And I did want to let you know that I've created a little bit of a brainstorming group, and I have 3 city managers and 3 fire chiefs, and so that we can sit down and it's Dan Schwartz, Jim Schutz, Todd Cusimano, Chief Weber, Chief Tyler, Chief Tubbs is my brainstorming group, so that we can put our brains together and have that thoughtful approach.
Okay, no, excellent. Thank you for that. That sounds wonderful to me. Any other clarifying questions or comments? No, seeing none. Let's move to public comment.
Thank you. We've received 2 written public comments that I'll read aloud now. Belle Cole writes, want to inform you that the Ecologically Sound Practices ESP partnership is working with environmental groups countywide to reach common ground and understanding on EIR issues. Our next comment comes from Mike. How will the MWPA be communicating its objectives and projects to the public in the interest of transparency? I'm looking for any further raised hands for public comment, and there is no further public comment.
So I see that those are in the they're in the question. These are written questions. Working with the environmental groups, I see. So the question: how will M be communicating objectives and projects to the public in interest of transparency?
I can tackle that one, President
Mark,
Goins.
we should probably respond to both, please. Yes, thank you.
Absolutely. So to Mike, excellent question. And currently, if you go to our website and you go to our projects page, you will see our current plan of work. In the future, we will be developing a portion of our website that shows all of our projects, visual representations of those projects, verbal or written descriptions, and then a project progression timeline, from proposal to planning to scoping to CEQA to initiating to completion. And so that's how we intend to do that. And we're likely to use the City of Novato's project website as a template. They have an excellent site. So I've already met with Novato on that, and we'll be looking to duplicate that. And then about informing us about ESP's partnership. Thank you, Belle. We'll be definitely reaching out to you to create that common ground.
Thanks very much. No further questions. I see no further questions. Okay, I'll bring this back to the committee, please, for discussion and direction to staff. It strikes me that we've affirmed our executive officers' principles and to keep an open mind and a dynamic organization here as the issues emerge. So I asked the Executive Officer Brown, do you feel that you're getting the feedback and support that you need, direction?
Absolutely.
Okay. No action then called for, correct?
Nope.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. No. Okay. Well, excellent. Well, let's move on. This is We're moving on to item number 5, which is the MWPA regular board meeting agenda planning for November 19th. The committee's been provided with a draft agenda for November 19th. First ask questions from the committee about the draft agenda, and then we'll take public comment. So there is an attachment, which is the draft agenda. We've worked through a number of these issues already, so it should facilitate discussion. So questions or comments on the draft agenda. And so let's take time and pause and questions or comments from the board on the November.
Director Goins, if I can just open up real quick with.
Thank you, Mark.
A lot of times I get questions or suggestions towards my executive officer comments, and the list that is on the agenda of what my comments are is not completely inclusive of what I'll be mentioning. So I did want to bring up that I will be bringing up the establishment of our Citizens Oversight Committee and the date of their first meeting. I will be discussing the CEQA 101 class that was put on by the county that our member agencies participated in. If it's not finalized by the time of our meeting, I'm going to discuss our directors and officers insurance. We're close to finalizing that. That may end up being a consent item to approve that insurance. And then I found out, thank you, Director McMillan, a great award to our grand jury for the work that they did that helped create the MWPA. So I'll discuss that. My council visits to individual town councils, city councils, or member boards has been going very well. And then we had a walkthrough of the Skyhawk subdivision where that was impacted by the glass fire significantly. Santa Rosa Fire participated, and we were able to get, I didn't get a total head count, but I think we were able to get every one of our defensible space evaluators from the county of Marin across the different agencies to participate in that walkthrough, because there was just so much to learn from that. We also had Fire Safe Marin there with a videographer, and the video that we're producing will be used for both future evaluators and also point towards homeowners. And what is really clear with that walkthrough is that it wasn't the wildland that burned down houses. It was what was near houses, what people had put near their houses, what people had planted near their houses. That's what burned the houses down. It's an incredible learning opportunity. And then I do have one suggested addition to the agenda that I've been mulling over my head. And I think the agenda item should be the discussion of changing our January meeting from a regular board meeting and make that our board retreat. So open to any questions, suggestions, additional items for the agenda.
Okay, thank you, Executive Officer Brown. So Director McEntee, please.
Yes, that was all great. I'm really happy to hear that. Very much in favor of doing a retreat in January. I'm a big fan of doing that. I would like to request specifically on item 8, and then also just generally that you specifically put in what it is that you want from us. Megan, you've just articulated that you want a subcommittee to be appointed, and this is the scope of it. I'd really like to see the staff reports on the each of the agenda items be a little more specific in what you're asking of us, rather than just provide direction or whatever, so that we can constrain our conversations and be effective.
Excellent suggestion, Director McEntee. So duly noted, I'm sure. Let's see, I see Director McMillan, please.
Yeah, I assume based on our discussion about the executive committee duties that will go onto this agenda.
Do you want it as an agenda item or a consent item? Did I lose my internet connection?
No, I would think it should be a regular agenda item so that people that aren't on the executive committee have an opportunity to discuss or give additional feedback.
Okay, excellent.
Got it.
Director Phillips, please.
Yeah, thanks. No, I think the agenda looks fine. However, if I look through it quickly as maybe an outside person going, oh, what are they up to? I see tax exemption, I see environmental compliance, that sounds like long-term stuff, organizational structure, update on administrative financial matters, et cetera. And if I were to look at that, I might say, well, that's all fine and dandy, but what about the fire danger? What is it we're doing now? Maybe somewhat limited. I'm not saying we rush into it, but I'm saying, what are we doing now? Because that's what the community is interested in, after all, to address the community's concerns. I don't know if that falls under Mark, under your report out, or Bruce, or someone, but I do think that we ought to keep in mind the community wants us to prevent fires. They don't want us to form committees.
That's an excellent comment, and you're repeating some input that I received months ago from some of the organizing folks that actually participate in the grand jury. It's really, what are you doing? You know, it looks like you're all business and no, you know, all talk, no walk. So, Executive Officer Brown, how would you suggest that we address that?
I've got one of two ways. Did I include project updates as part of my executive officer's report? I think that might be the most succinct way to do it. And then the other thought is that it really, our activity really falls underneath the operations committee report. However, we always tend to get to that at about hour 1:55, and it's a little bit rushed. And perhaps we move that up to an earlier part of the meeting. And so I'm open to either direction from you guys.
Yeah, I think it's a great question, Director Phillips, and I think there's a story to be told. It's not a story. It's not fiction. It's reality. It's what is currently in place. You know, currently the County CWPP is in the process of being updated and revised. That we're working with environmental sound practices folks to identify ecologically sound work that we can do. That we have an active program of work which were off-the-shelf projects that need to be done. I think we actually need to start telling that story every meeting. I do think that the discussion that we've just had about the environmental compliance, when we're talking about, we are actually discussing the possibility of programmatic EIR, in which we are talking about, in essence, you know, working with member agencies to articulate, you know, the critical hazards, the risks and the consequences and the outcomes. I think we need to start telling that story. And Mark, I'll help you with a text. I'm happy to tell it, or actually it's probably best that you tell it as executive officer.
How about this? Following the consent calendar, we create a new agenda item called project update, and I create a staff report that outlines the project update, and I'll bullet point it during the meeting. Not
just project update. I think that this is
progress update.
This is update of what is it? I'm missing the MWPA.
Yeah, about wildfire prevention.
Yeah,
that's what we're interested in.
That's
wildfire prevention update.
Excellent. Oh, that's great. That's what we want to do.
That'll be agenda item 7, and everything will move down 1.
That sounds really great to me.
Thank you.
Wonderful suggestion. Other items on the agenda? Any comments on the agenda? We have walked through most of the topics, so I think that we're clear. And just at some point, Director, or for Executive Officer Brown, Bell Cole was in this, made a comment here, here a few minutes ago, but we need to start clarifying the actions that are being taken currently, and what with the defensible space, vegetation management, and carbon, water-wise, what have you. I think we need to start articulating what that's all about and where it's headed. Bell is doing such an amazing job with all those teams. But I've participated in all 3 of the teams. I've been actively engaged in all 3. There's a lot going on right now, but I do believe that we're going to have to start fielding this. We're going to get pitched some stuff that we need to have a game plan for for discussion, deliberation, consideration, adoption. So I'm not sure, we as an executive committee, I think it's our job to field that first. So when we do that, how they do that, I'm open to some thoughts and discussions, but we need to get it on the agenda here shortly.
Absolutely. I had an email dialogue with Bell and Mike Swayze yesterday, and my intention was to add that to our next executive committee meeting.
Okay. Sounds good.
Bruce, I apologize. I have to jump off right now. So thank you all.
Thank you, Director Rodoni. Thanks so much. Really great work.
Thanks, Dan.
So I believe that are we ready to move on? Let's see, we've talked public comments, right? Public comments on the agenda planning, meeting agenda planning for November 19th.
Thank you. I'm looking for any raised hands. And it appears that there's no public comment.
Okay. So back to the committee, we've certainly had a lot of discussion already. Once again, we're ahead of ourselves. Is there any other discussion? I think we do need a motion to approve.
So move.
Second.
Moved by Director Phillips, second by Director McEntee. And a vote.
Novato Fire District,
Approve, yay, aye.
City of Mill Valley,
Aye.
Town of Ross,
Aye.
City of San Rafael,
Aye.
and the County of Marin is absent. The motion passes.
Excellent, thanks so much. Okay, let's move to item number 10, potential transition to action minutes for MWPA meetings. The recommendation is the executive committee receive a verbal report regarding the transition to action minutes and provide direction to staff. Director or Officer Brown, will you please provide a verbal report?
Absolutely. And thank you, Director McEntee, for suggesting the action minutes. And I've talked to quite a few other public agencies, and they all are supportive of action minutes within their organizations. And I think the benefit of action minutes is we already have a video of the entire meeting. And I think action minutes could actually increase the depth of our message being received. If people see a 25-page list of minutes, it might be overwhelming to try to absorb that entire message. Whereas if we have a succinct minutes of action minutes, that we're actually going to get our message out better.
Thank you. Thank you, Executive Officer Brown. So any questions, clarifying questions or comments from the committee? Director McMillan, please.
I'm just wondering if it's cheaper to have action item meeting minutes, right? We're going to save some money.
Yes, we will.
I have a question. I don't understand what action minutes are.
So rather than having a word for word dialogue listed in our minutes, it would be a summarization with bullet points. So this was what was brought up. This is the general content of the conversation and discussion and public comment. And this was the action taken.
Excellent. Excellent. Sounds like an efficiency move. That sounds great. Thanks so much. Any other questions or comments? I see none. Now opportunity for public comment.
Looking for any raised hands in our audience, and there is no public comment.
Oh, excellent. Let's bring it back here to the committee for discussion and direction staff. I'm hearing an affirmation that this is a smart thing to do, make us more efficient and save us some money. So I don't know that we need do we need a motion? No. Excellent. Thank Director McEntee. Thank you for this suggestion, and Director Brown for bringing it to us. So let's just make that happen. Moving on to item 11, information items. Does staff have any additional information items that they would like to present today? I'm seeing none. Let's move to item 12. Board members request future agenda items. We'll entertain requests for the committee for future agenda items. We've already added the dialogue regarding what's happening with the ecologically sound practices group and Bill Cole's leadership effort. What else? I think seems like we have the Citizen Oversight Committee meeting coming, and that's already calendarized. Is that correct, Executive Officer Brown?
We're bouncing between two dates right now.
I'm sorry?
We are bouncing back and forth between two dates. The original date I proposed was the week of Thanksgiving, which is proposing some of our problems, so we might go 1 week later. But by the end of today, I'll have a meeting for the COC scheduled.
Okay. I'd like to consider us thinking about some of the ad hoc, if you will, some of the external groups that have been engaging with us meaningfully. One being the Fern, and secondly being this is a loose affiliation of really smart, competent, and supportive people, the Citizens for Wildfire Prevention. And this may be used, and this may be a legal discussion along with an executive committee discussion, but we are being contacted by these entities. They've stood themselves up. They have something to say. They participate in our other meetings, but I'm a little unclear as to what our relationships are with them, how it conforms with our bylaws. So and help me articulate this, but I think some of you know of what I'm speaking. Mark, I know that you do. I just want to recognize that we are being contacted. They're communicating with us. Should we formalize these as you know? But I think we have to have a discussion about. Let's recognize that these communications are indeed occurring, and kind of clarify. So what's the nature of this agreement? And I know it's a little loose there, but
I think I get where you're going with this, and I definitely can add that as an executive committee item for next meeting.
Okay, that'll help clarify for me, you know, where the moving parts are and how they're all related. And we'll need some help, Megan, from you. I see Director Phillips. I see you had your hand up.
Hey, yeah, thanks. And under the heading of future agenda item, I know this is on everybody's mind, but it'd be nice to have maybe a timeline for a strategic plan and coordination with the community.
Excellent. Excellent.
I'm sorry, I was muted. Excellent, I got it.
Wonderful. So any other future agenda items? I think we've come to an end. So unless there's any other, no, it is 11:40 a.m. on 11/5/2020. I'd like to adjourn this meeting. Thank you, everyone, for a really wonderful meeting. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce.
Yeah,
Good
everybody,
job.
have a great day.
Bye.
Thanks, Mark. Have a good day.